In 2008 I bought a house whose previous owner killed himself. He left behind his wife and 3 small children. I didn't know that when I bought the house, but even if I knew, I would still have bought it because it was very cheap and I was never a superstitious person. Anyway, soon after we moved in, a lot of creepy things started to happen. Firstly, my children were scared with no reason, even during the day. I thought it's just because we were in a new house. One evening my daughter told me that she saw a person in our kitchen through the door's window, frosted glass, but when she entered there was nobody inside. I ignored her because I thought she just has a rich imagination. Few days later me and my husband saw the same silhouette in the kitchen, and when we entered there was nobody inside. We clearly saw a man's silhouette, both of us. We actually thought as my father-in-law, the only one who had the key from the house, except us of course. When we entered and there was nobody inside, we had the same reaction. We got out as fast as we could. After a few silent minutes we went back to the kitchen but left the door open, lol. We checked everywhere, every room of the house. There was nobody. There's no point to say I couldn't sleep at all that night. The kids were more and more scared to the point they refused to go to the toilet alone. I couldn't sleep. I had a lot of nightmares. Sometimes I was just feeling watched. My husband got ill with no medical explanation. I got very ill soon after, also inexplicable. Several times I saw a crow in my yard, on the fence, staring at me. Normally I wouldn't think at anything bad seeing a crow. As I said, I'm not superstitious. But this one was giving me creeps with no logical reason. A lot of things inexplicably broke in the house. The pipes bursted several times and the plumber was baffled. He couldn't understand why. The light bulbs in the kitchen kept blowing. An electrician came several times to see why is this happening and couldn't find an explanation or a solution to prevent this happening. Anyway, soon we left the country, not because of our creepy house. The house is empty now. Sometimes we go there during the summer, but we actually prefer sleeping somewhere else. There's a lot of negative vibes there. We seriously think to sell it because we don't like at all going there. When I was 19, my family and I were out of town in Hot Springs, Arkansas, having fun at a theme park they have there. It was me, my mom, dad, and my 3 younger siblings. We had been there a couple days over the weekend and needed gas before driving a few hours back home. I walked into the gas station/store looking for the bathroom. They said it was outside and gave me a key. Even though it was daylight and my parents were right outside at the pumps, I instantly had a horrible gut feeling. It was such a strange feeling that it's hard to describe. It wasn't quite fear, but something like if you could feel evil, maybe like a warning sign. Anyway, the bathroom is on the other side of the gas station facing away from the pumps, and I go inside, do my thing, wash my hands, and then, as my hand is on the door handle to leave, the feeling gets intense, like I might throw up, and I'm feeling crazy emotions, and I knew without knowing for certain that I should not leave. I decide to call my parents from the restroom and I tell them they need to come get me on the other side. They don't even question it, and say they're on their way. I don't bother waiting outside the bathroom at all. This feeling of evil is so strong that there is no way I'm heading out the door. I know that's probably not something real, to feel evil, but it's not like any other feeling. A few moments later, I hear a knock. I know right away it's okay and open the door. It's my dad. He asks if I'm okay. Of course, I was fine, and because I couldn't quite explain my feelings, I said yes. He then said that when he drove the car around the back, there was a man with an old truck pulled up to the bathroom with his truck door open. The man was standing directly outside the bathroom door, as if he were ready to throw me in his truck the second I stepped out. When he saw my parents, he jumped in his truck and drove off. My dad was furious. He remembered the make and color of the truck and even noticed the broken back window of his cab. We whipped out of the parking lot with the whole family going after the guy. We actually caught up with him and followed him a ways. I didn't know what my dad would have done if he'd caught him, but that intense feeling of fear was back. We almost ended up at a red light together, but the man in the truck went through it, and we lost him. I don't know for sure what my original feeling of dread and fear was, but my mom said it was the Holy Spirit taking care of me, warning me. I really don't know. I've had it a few times since then, and it's always in bad situations, so maybe she's right. I have two experiences, one of my own, and one that happened to my grandfather, but I was an indirect witness of. My own experience occurred when I was about 10 to 11 years old. I was helping my mother clean the church we attended at the time, and we were the only two people present. As I was passing through the hallway from the classrooms back toward the chapel, I heard organ music playing a hymn quite beautifully. I went to the chapel to see if it was my mother, though I was sure she couldn't play like that, as I'd never heard her play before. The moment my hand touched the door handle, the music cut off abruptly. I opened the door to see a darkened chapel and no one visible. I turned around and saw my mother coming out of another classroom into the hallway. I asked her if she'd heard the organ, and she said yes, and in fact had heard it before. I asked if there was someone playing, and she said, "Go check the organ." I went to the organ and found it locked. I came back to her with a puzzled look on my face, and she told me the pastor had told her that the faithful dead used the chapel just as we do. So what I'd heard was a spirit playing for a congregation of faithful spirits. My grandfather was a brutally honest and taciturn man. He wasn't prone to telling stories or relating experiences, and believed that if you had a job to do, you did it then and there. During one summer vacation when I was about 15 and my family was visiting, he came home early from working in the small town graveyard where they lived. It seemed unusual even though it was raining heavily with lots of lightning and thunder. He looked pale and shaken, and had to stop shivering before he could ask for a cup of tea. He then told my grandmother, mother, and I, my dad and siblings had gone to the nearby town to get some things, that while he was mowing the cemetery lawn on the new riding mower they had, he heard a male voice behind him saying, "Get off the mower and leave." He thought it might have been one of the other caretakers, so he stopped and turned his head to tell whoever it was he wasn't leaving till the mowing was done, but there was nobody there. He resumed mowing after checking the sky and assuring himself he could finish before the storm broke. A few moments later, he heard several voices, male and female, say the same thing as before. Again he looked but saw nobody, so kept going. Almost immediately, a deep voice he recognized as his father's said to him, "Elmer, it isn't your time. Get off the mower right now and go home." That flustered him so badly he did as the voice instructed. Just as he got to the car, there was a bright flash and booming noise where he'd left the mower, as it got hit by lightning. The next morning we all went to the cemetery, to find the mower laying on its side, badly burnt and damaged, not more than 10 feet from his father's grave. It was the birthday of my girlfriend, Cindy, and I was greatly excited to meet her. I had planned a surprise celebration at her luxurious residence on the 57th floor of Paramount Miami World Center in Miami, Florida. As I walked towards the building, my heart was filled with anticipation and joy. However, my excitement was dampened when I accidentally collided with an old lady who appeared to be in her mid-70s. I quickly apologized, but there was something about her that intrigued me. Her pale complexion and piercing blue eyes seemed to hold a sense of familiarity, but I couldn't quite place it. Ignoring my unease, I rushed towards the elevator, eager to reach Cindy's birthday party. To my disbelief, as the elevator doors closed, I saw that the same old lady was inside with me. She stood there, leaning on a cane, barely able to walk. Goosebumps crawled up my arms, and I tried to shake off the feeling that something was off about her. "Which floor?" I asked, trying to maintain a polite smile despite my uneasiness. 57th floor," she replied in a frail voice, her gaze fixed on the elevator buttons. The elevator ride felt unusually long, and the atmosphere became increasingly tense. The old lady seemed to stare straight ahead, never acknowledging my presence. I cleared my throat nervously, attempting to break the awkward silence, but she remained unresponsive. Finally, the elevator arrived at Cindy's floor. As the doors slowly opened, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was terribly wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. With a deep breath, I stepped out of the elevator, trying to convince myself that my nerves were just getting the better of me. Cindy's apartment door was slightly ajar, and I hesitated before entering. The lights were dim, and there was an eerie silence that filled the air. "Cindy? It's me," I called out, but there was no response. A feeling of dread washed over me as I cautiously pushed the door open. The sight before me made my blood run cold. The apartment was in disarray, with furniture overturned and shattered glass scattered across the floor. "Cindy!" I shouted, panic rising within me. But instead of finding Cindy, I found the old lady from the elevator standing in the shadows. She was no longer leaning on her cane, and her frail appearance had transformed into something far more sinister. Her eyes gleamed with a malevolent light as she smirked at me, revealing unnaturally sharp teeth. "You shouldn't have come here," she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. "It's too late now." Terrified and confused, I tried to back away, but it felt as if an invisible force was holding me in place. The old lady approached with an unsettling grace, her footsteps echoing through the eerie silence. Now, right from this point as I narrate, suddenly I woke up from the horn. I was in the taxi. I felt relaxed, it was just my dream. So I forgot it and reached to the building, and I was amazed to find myself before the same lady whom I had seen in my dream. She was smiling strangely to see me. As I stepped out of the taxi, my heart was still racing from the vivid and terrifying dream I had just experienced. I couldn't help but shake off the feeling of unease as I saw the familiar figure of the old lady standing in front of the building, just as she had appeared in my nightmare. I tried to dismiss it as a mere coincidence, telling myself that dreams are just a product of an overactive imagination. Taking a deep breath, I approached the old lady cautiously. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said, trying to sound composed despite the lingering fear. "Do I know you from somewhere?" The old lady smiled strangely, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "Oh, I believe you do," she replied cryptically, her voice soft but carrying an air of mystery. "But that's not important now. You have other matters to attend to, don't you?" My mind was racing, trying to make sense of the situation. How could the same old lady from my dream be standing here in reality, speaking to me as if she knew something about me? It felt like I had stepped into a surreal nightmare, and I desperately wanted to wake up. Shaking off the feeling of dread, I managed a polite smile. "Yes, I'm here for my girlfriend's birthday celebration on the 57th floor," I explained. The old lady nodded knowingly. "Ah, young love, such a powerful force, isn't it?" she said, her eyes seeming to pierce into my soul. "But be careful, young man. Not everything is as it seems." Her cryptic words only added to my unease, but I tried to brush them off as mere coincidence once again. Perhaps she was just an eccentric old woman who enjoyed giving cryptic advice to strangers. As I made my way to the elevator, the old lady's unsettling smile stayed with me, haunting my thoughts. The ride to the 57th floor felt longer than usual, and my heart pounded with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I half expected the elevator doors to open to a scene of chaos, just like in my dream, but instead, I was greeted with the warm glow of candles and the sound of laughter and cheerful voices. Relief washed over me as I entered the apartment and saw Cindy's smiling face. "Happy birthday!" I said, embracing her tightly. As the evening went on, the lingering unease from my encounter with the old lady slowly faded, and I tried to enjoy the celebration. But every now and then, her words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. As the night drew to a close, I decided to share my strange encounter with Cindy. She listened attentively, a curious look on her face. "That's bizarre," she said. "But maybe it was just a coincidence." "Yeah, you're probably right," I replied, trying to convince myself once again. However, as I glanced out of the window, I saw the old lady standing across the street, watching probably towards me.